Kenya has won the Commonwealth Games men's steeplechase so consistently that analysts stopped asking who would take gold and started asking only by how much. At the 2022 Birmingham final, the Kenyan squad entered with 3 athletes: Abraham Kibiwot, Conseslus Kipruto, and Amos Serem, carrying combined credentials that included an Olympic gold medal, a World U20 title, and a top 5 World Championship finish. Against them stood 8 competitors from Australia, Canada, England, Wales, and India. One of those athletes had already rewritten his national record that season and arrived in Birmingham having solved something technically that Indian distance runners had never solved before. What followed made analysts rewatch the final 600 meters more times than they will admit. Watch closely from the gun.
To jump on, but the men's steeplechasers are coming out shortly, and a small but high caliber field. 9 athletes out there, 3 Kenyans, 2 Australians, 1 athlete each from England, Wales, India, and Canada. And if I tell you that the last 6 Commonwealth Games has seen Kenya produce a clean sweep, 1, 2, 3, all the medals. Well, they are the only nation that have the opportunity to do that yet again here today with their 3 representatives who are very strong. There is Abraham Kibiwot, 5th at the World Championships, the 26-year-old silver medalist 4 years ago, behind Conseslus Kipruto, his compatriot. And there is Kipruto, has made a comeback this year, the Rio Games Olympic champion, twice world champion, 2017, 2019. He is the defending champion here, who took a bronze in Eugene 19 days ago. Edward Trippas of Australia is in there as well, the 23-year-old, went out in his heats in Eugene. He's an 8:20 performer this year. John Gay of Canada, 15th in Tokyo last year. Graham Fell, the last non-Kenyan athlete to take a medal in the Commonwealth Games, apart from Kenya. That was in '86. There is Sable, Avinash Sable, 11th at the World Championships in Eugene. Good athlete, 8:12 this year. Amos Serem, the reigning World Under-20 champion in Nairobi last year, took gold. He's an 8:09 performer. He's still only 19. Jonathan Hopkins, 6th in the Commonwealth Games for Wales, back in 2018. 8:31 this year, close to his lifetime best. There's Zach Seddon, European Under-23 champion back in 2013. Went out in his heats in Tokyo, but he was 5th in the European Championships in 2018. And Ben Buckingham completes the lineup for Australia, the 30-year-old, went out in his heats in Eugene, but he has run 8:19 this year. That's a personal best. World class used to be considered anything close to 8:20, anything under 8:20. Now times have moved on, and with plenty of athletes having broken the 8-minute barrier. I say plenty of athletes, 13 men in history have broken 8 minutes. 9 of them are Kenyan, 10 of them Kenyan born. So where we go then, Rob Walker, can you see anybody denying Kenya a retention of the title? Might be tougher to figure out which of the 3 Kenyans starts as favourite, but it is a very strong trio they brought here to Birmingham.
Really strong, Tim, and I think you would fancy them perhaps to go 7 clean sweeps in a row. Perhaps looking on paper, Tim, you touched on Sable and what a great season he's had with that national record when he was 5th in Rabat, the Indian leading. Maybe if one of the Kenyans runs into a problem, if he can run anywhere close to that 8:12 national record, it would be a sensational situation for the Indian to get in the shake-up. But you mentioned Serem, World Junior Champion, Kipruto, the defending champion, coming back to form, and Kibiwot, one of the fastest men in the world this year, and the national champion. The trio of Kenyans are absolutely sensational. It is hard to see beyond them.
Well, Kenya's dominance of the steeplechase over the last 20 years and more, 30 years, is unquestioned. It is beginning to show 1 or 2 cracks in Eugene. A couple of weeks back, 19 days ago, at the World Championships, El Bakali of Morocco, who is the Olympic champion, took gold in Oregon. Gurma of Ethiopia took a silver medal. Only Conseslus Kipruto got Kenya onto the rostrum with his bronze medal. But the last 8 Commonwealth Games have been won by Kenya. And I mentioned Graham Fell. He was a London lad, born in Essex, and he changed to Canadian nationality, and in 1986 in Edinburgh he took a bronze medal. That was the last non-Kenyan medal won at the Commonwealth Games in this steeplechase, 1986.
And look at that, Tim. As if to underline the Kenyan dominance, Sable is the only one even vaguely attempting or able to go with them. John Gay is trying to lead that little quintet, but already down the back straight there are huge gaps. It's Gay just towards the right of picture. Sable is doing his level best here. If he's going to have any chance at all, he's got to be this bold. And how good is it, Tim, to see Conseslus Kipruto coming back to something like his best form? I think that bronze in Eugene was highly significant for him.
It was indeed. Sable, I don't know if he wanted this to happen. He went to the front, set off at a reasonable tempo. The Kenyans came past him and accelerated. He's gone with them. And the race, with less than a kilometre gone, has been ripped apart by the Kenyans. Kipruto, Conseslus Kipruto, in the middle there of this Kenyan trio. I talked about 1-2-3s for Kenya. 2:39 that first kilometre. It's sub 8-minute tempo. This is fantastically fast. The Commonwealth Games record was by Kipruto 4 years ago, 8:10. This will be significantly quicker unless there's a significant slowing. Sable just latched onto this trio of Kenyan vests. It's Kibiwot, Kipruto and Serem, 1, 2, 3. Sable in 4th place. He will be hoping that one of them fades or maybe comes a cropper at one of these obstacles. We saw it last night in the women's steeplechase. The Olympic champion hitting a barrier with a lap and a half to go, allowing an English athlete to take a super silver. Sable tucked in behind them, but if he even if he hangs on to this, Rob, doesn't get a medal, he may get a personal best. The Indian there in blue, he's having a fabulous run so far.
Well, the interesting thing about this pace, Tim, at their very best, these three Kenyans are capable of running very close to 8 minutes, but this season, Serem 8:09, Kipruto 8:08 and Kibiwot 8:06, all three of them running 5 or 6 seconds quicker at the moment than they have done all season. If Sable can hang on, it wouldn't just be a PB, it would be a national record. The worry for him, has he gone too hard, too early to stay in contention for a medal?
Well, he's got 3 pacemakers in effect, the Indian there, to ride a picture in 4th place. By the way, the wind has picked up. When we arrived here and went on air a couple of hours ago, there was no wind here in Alexander Stadium. The flags were hanging limply, but now they are out hanging blowing very stiffly. The wind is up. I don't know if anything's getting down there on the track, but if it's not, then conditions are just about perfect. That looks like the Welshman in 5th place, Jonathan Hopkins, 6th in the last Commonwealth Games, having a good solid run here. Zach Seddon in the white vest of England leading that Aussie duo. The Australians Ben Buckingham and Edward Trippas trying to move along and give a good account of themselves. And there may well be that. Trouble is, they're all wallowing in the wake of this incredibly fast pace up out front. And 2:39 for the first K. And I don't think there's been a great deal of let up so far. In fact, it's Gay who is pushing on hard in 5th place now behind this quartet. But look at this echelon of Kenyans. 1, 2, 3. Sable battling on to try and stay with this trio. Are we heading for another Kenyan 1, 2, 3, or could there be an upset?
Well, Tim, you and I spend a lot of time covering distance races in India, and they'll be so proud and so excited to see Avinash Sable. 2:47 that second K from a 2:39 opener. It was inevitable they would slow down. They are miles clear of Gay of Canada, who's in 5th. Watch for Kipruto in 2nd. This is a guy who's won everything. World Youth title, World Junior title, 5 consecutive World Championship medals. And Kibiwot's just having a little look over his shoulder there, Tim. I think he feels 1 or 2 of his compatriots as we look at Kipruto in 2nd. I think the leader's asking for a little bit of help. He just gesticulated to Kipruto in 2nd as if to say, come on, 2 laps to go, you need to get involved.
Well, he's pushing on Kibiwot and actually getting a bit of a gap on Kipruto. Conseslus Kipruto is not the same runner he was 2 or 3 years ago. He's been having trouble this last couple of years, injury problems in particular, as well as the problems away from the track. And while it's been great to see him back this year, Conseslus Kipruto, he is the Rio Olympic champion, he's the defending Commonwealth champion, he's twice world champion, and this wonderful return from him is so good to see. But he's run 8:08 this year, and Kibiwot here is pushing on and maybe taking it into territory that Kipruto just cannot live with. And a gap, in fact, that gap is growing, Rob, very significantly. 1.5 seconds there at that water jump for the penultimate time.
Kibiwot does have the advantage, and look at that. Conseslus Kipruto has been dropped. Sable has moved up into the silver medal position. This will be generating incredible excitement back in India. He's having the race of his life.
The bell then in about 7:07. Kibiwot continues to lead. Sable in second place. The irony of this is that Sable of India in the blue, who surely now is heading for a medal from the age of 6, almost Kenyan style, because we're so familiar with this story for the Kenyans, would run or walk to school the 6 kilometres distance between home and school, as there was no transport, and that is what so many of the Kenyans do. And Sable now pulls up alongside Kibiwot. It's unthinkable, surely, that a Kenyan can be defeated. They're not going to have a 1-2-3, barring disaster in this next 150 metres. The water jump for the final time. This is critical. A little skip there from Kibiwot. What was that all about? Sable in second place, a metre down. Has he got the speed? Kibiwot grimacing, looks over his shoulder. Sable, this final barrier is critical. Sable takes it well. Kibiwot a little better. I don't know if the Indian's going to get there, or is he? As they come to the line, it's going to be tight. Sable's so close. He runs a new personal best, surely, the winning time, 8:11. A superb silver for the Indian, but gold again for Kibiwot of Kenya. Abraham Kibiwot, second in the last Commonwealth Games, goes the one place better that was available to him. Coming through for 5th place is Gay of Canada. What a good run from him. In fact, 4th, I think, for Gay there, as Conseslus Kipruto hits the blockers over the final lap and almost walks across the line. Brilliant running from Abraham Kibiwot, but surely the story of that race is the fabulous effort from Avinash Sable of India, a personal best, a national record, of course, 8:11:20. The landscape of steeplechasing is changing.
Tim, that was absolutely brilliant. Abraham Kibiwot had to use every single ounce of his energy to take that title. He was really stuttering into that last water jump because he was determined to not touch the top of the barrier. He realised the Indian was closing on him, and it was a good jump in the end, but how tight was that? 0.05 of a second, a PB and a national record for Sable. We knew this young guy was good when he came 5th in Rabat and broke the Indian national record. Honestly, what Chopra has done with the javelin, the Olympic champion taking the World Championship silver medalist, Sable has just done with that brilliant, sensational silver in the steeplechase. He was barely a whisker away from pulling off what would have been, Tim, the greatest
8 minutes and 11 seconds. That is how fast Abraham Kibiwot ran the 3,000 meters steeplechase at the 2022 Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. On the surface, it looks like a clean Kenyan victory, the kind the steeplechase has produced for decades. But the number that should stop you is not 8:11. It is the gap behind him. Because an athlete from a nation that had never won a global steeplechase medal closed to within fractions of that mark and came closer to rewriting the event's history than anyone had any right to expect. The steeplechase is unlike any other distance race. It combines the aerobic demands of a 3,000-meter effort with 28 fixed barriers and 7 water jumps, each one a technical problem embedded inside a physiological one. Miss your rhythm over a barrier and you bleed speed. Hit the water jump wrong and you lose a full second recovering your stride. The best steeplechasers do not just run fast. They run efficiently at high speed, which is a genuinely different skill. Coming into Birmingham, Kenya's hold on this event was not a matter of debate. It was statistical. Kenyan athletes had dominated Commonwealth steeplechase podiums across multiple generations, and the 2022 squad made that dominance look structural rather than lucky. Abraham Kibiwot had finished 5th at the World Championships. Conseslus Kipruto entered as the defending Commonwealth champion and Olympic gold medalist from Rio 2016. Serem was the reigning World U20 champion. 3 athletes, 3 distinct credential profiles, all wearing the same vest. The strangest part about how this race unfolded? The Kenyan strategy was not to wait. It was to attack from the start and see who cracked first. The opening kilometer went in 2:39. Project that pace out, and you are looking at a sub-8:15 finish, genuinely fast for a Commonwealth Games final. This was not accidental. Running the first kilometer that hard in a steeplechase serves a specific tactical function. It forces every athlete in the field to make an immediate metabolic decision. Match the pace and risk your final lap, or let the leaders go and concede the race right there. Most of the field chose survival. Canada's John Gay, Australia's runners, England's representative all dropped before the race was 2 minutes old. One athlete refused that choice. Avinash Sable of India had already broken the Indian national record in the steeplechase earlier that season. He arrived in Birmingham not as a traditional contender. India had no history of threatening Kenya at this distance, but as a runner who had spent years rebuilding what Indian distance running could look like technically. His barrier clearance was compact and controlled. His water jump approach was measured. And he understood pace honesty. He knew exactly what tempo he could sustain without destroying his finish. Staying with the Kenyan trio at 2:39 per kilometer was a calculated gamble. The cost of that decision would either show up in the final lap, or it would not. Here is what this tells us about how steeplechase tactics have shifted. A decade ago, the assumption was that non-Kenyan runners would race for 4th. The realistic ceiling for everyone else was reaching the podium on a bad Kenyan day. What Sable's presence at the front of this race showed was something more structural. That the technical gap, the barrier rhythm, the water jump economy, was no longer exclusively Kenyan territory. Athletes from other systems were learning to move over obstacles at race pace without losing the aerobic thread. The second kilometer slowed to approximately 2:47. That matters technically. When a steeplechase field decelerates slightly in the middle section, it is rarely because the leaders are recovering. It is because the race is compressing. The leaders are still working hard, but the gap between them and the chasing pack is no longer growing. After 2 kilometers, the leading group had reduced to 4. Kibiwot, Kipruto, Serem, and Sable. What made that quartet work so differently from the rest of the field? It is worth sitting with that question, because the answer is not just fitness. The answer is barrier economy. Each barrier in the steeplechase costs energy proportional to how inefficiently you cross it. An athlete who hops slightly too high wastes energy on unnecessary vertical displacement. One who lands on a stiff leg absorbs impact rather than transferring it forward. Over 28 barriers and 7 water jumps, small inefficiencies compound into seconds. The 4 athletes still together with 1 kilometer to go had each solved this problem in their own way. With roughly 600 meters remaining, Kibiwot made his decisive move. He pushed the pace, not dramatically, but steadily, raising the cost of every stride for anyone hanging behind him. And here is where the race revealed its most important subplot. Conseslus Kipruto, the defending champion, could not hold the surge. Kipruto's career had been interrupted by injuries and inconsistent preparation. His barrier technique remained excellent. Years of muscle memory do not vanish. But his finishing speed was not what it had been at his peak. As Kibiwot extended, Kipruto lost contact. The Kenyan trio had become a Kenyan singleton. Sable moved into second. The final lap was a study in 2 different kinds of courage. Kibiwot's was tactical and preemptive. He had front-loaded the race, burned off rivals systematically, and was holding a lead built from controlled aggression. Sable's was reactive and absolute. He was closing ground on a Kenyan champion in a discipline Kenya had owned for decades, with nothing in the historical record suggesting he should be able to do this. The final water jump was the diagnostic moment. Kibiwot executed it with clean footfall on the barrier and a long stride into the water, maintaining forward momentum rather than checking it. Sable landed hard and immediately accelerated. The gap entering the final straight was less than 2 seconds. Kibiwot crossed the line in 8 minutes, 11.72 seconds. Sable finished in 8 minutes, 12.48 seconds. A personal best and Indian national record by a significant margin. One number defines what we should take from this race. That 0.76-second margin across 3,000 meters and 35 obstacles separated a Kenyan champion from a result that would have been, by any historical measure, impossible to predict. The steeplechase is still Kenya's event. The depth, the technical inheritance, the tactical intelligence in Kibiwot's race management, none of that has gone anywhere. But the margin is no longer comfortable. Sable proved that the event's technical demands can be learned outside East Africa. When they are, the podium becomes a real conversation. If you watch a steeplechase from now on, do not just follow the leader. Watch the water jump at the 2-kilometer mark. That is where the race is actually decided. Not the final straight, not the last barrier. The athletes who can still accelerate out of that water jump with a kilometer remaining are the ones who managed their mechanics from the gun. If this breakdown gave you something you cannot unsee in the next race you watch, subscribe. There is a lot more to break down. Like this video if the Sable analysis surprised you, and drop a comment. Did Kibiwot win this race, or did Sable nearly steal it? The distinction matters more than you might think.